Welcome to the Alcohol Minimalist Podcast. I'm your host, Molly Watts. If you want to change your drinking habits and create a peaceful relationship with alcohol, you're in the right place. This podcast explores the strategies I use to overcome a lifetime of family alcohol abuse, more than 30 years of anxiety and worry about my own drinking, and what felt like an unbreakable daily drinking habit. Becoming an alcohol minimalist means removing excess alcohol from your life so it doesn't remove you from life. It means being able to take alcohol or leave it without feeling deprived. It means to live peacefully, being able to enjoy a glass of wine without feeling guilty and without needing to finish the bottle. With science on our side, we'll shatter your past patterns and eliminate your excuses. Changing your relationship with alcohol is possible. I'm here to help you do it. Let's start now. Well, hello and welcome back to the Alcohol Minimalist Podcast. With me, your host, Molly Watts, coming to you from, it is a steamy Oregon right now. It is very hot. It has been hot this weekend. Right now, I'm recording this. It's Labor Day weekend, and I am looking forward to, enjoying myself. I'm actually headed to the Oregon State Fair on Labor Day because Monday's actually supposed to be a little cooler. And just watching some football, getting ready for the fall, and relaxing in a fairly steamy, sweaty Oregon. How have you been doing? This has been such a great month. I have loved the summer content series. This is the last one of those episodes this week that I'm dropping. And I don't know. I don't think I'd say I've saved the best for last, but certainly one of my biggest mentors. If you've read my book, Breaking the Bottle Legacy, you know that I refer to the quote that I learned from Elizabeth Benton, which is from Rumi, but it was in her book, Chasing Cupcakes, that I first learned it. And that quote is, "Why do you stay in prison when the doors are so wide open?" It is such a powerful reminder of the stories and the narratives that we create for ourselves and how they keep us stuck. That's what it means to me. And today, in this episode of my summer content series, I am sharing an episode from Elizabeth Bento and the Primal Potential podcast. It's a podcast that I recommend all the time to people. I've been referencing Chasing Cupcakes quite a bit lately with my coaching clients. And so I asked Elizabeth if I could share this specific episode because she has been going back, and you can go back and listen to some of these, diving into two chapters from Chasing Cupcakes and kind of reflecting back on them. It's been a few years now since she wrote that book, but it's a book that I go back to time and time again. And this particular episode, she's talking all about kind of changing your thought patterns and ways of doing that. And she gives a very strategic way of how you can actually reframe thoughts in the moment. Because, we can't just go from thinking one thing and then trying to slap on a positive affirmation or think the exact opposite of it, right? Our brains are going to be like, yeah, no, that's not true. That's not what I believe. And so we have to do that incrementally. And I really love what she shares here. Like I said, I love a lot of what Elizabeth shares. She talks too about her upgrade program. I've done upgrade. I've done her 10X mindset. I think they're really valuable. And I would encourage you to check those out as well. There'll be links in the show notes. And if you didn't hear it, last week I announced that this is the final Wednesday episode. That's right. We are shifting our drop dates. And so you will hear from me again on Monday, September 9th. That will be a regular episode. And then on Thursday, September 12th, will be the first episode of Think Thursday. Think Thursday is all about neuroscience, about behavior change, and it's, of course, about your mindset. I am super excited to do 2 episodes a week. I'm super excited to get to dive into neuroscience a little bit more because it really is something that I am so passionate about and fascinated by. And I want to share that with you because I really believe that understanding your human brain and how it works and how to work with it to create sustainable change is the key to changing your relationship with alcohol. And it's really the key to changing any habit that no longer serves you. All right. Without further ado, here is Elizabeth Benton from the Primal Potential podcast. Have a great week, everyone. I'll see you on Monday.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Primal Potential podcast. I am Elizabeth Benton. Thanks so much for joining me today. We are continuing our conversation about how to change your thoughts, because one of the things that I explain to clients over and over again is that it's a little bit of a fool's errand, if not entirely a fool's errand, to just try to focus on changing your behavior. I work with so many people who are like, I just need to stop snacking at night, or once I start having sugar, it's like I can't stop. Or if I make one choice that's not on plan, then I just throw out the whole day and every slip becomes a slide. And I tell them the issue here is not sugar. The issue here is not snacking. The issue here is the stories you tell yourself around that are continuing to let you off the hook, that are talking you into the behavior, that are talking you out of getting to your next best choice immediately. And we've got to change that. And so often people say, all right, that makes sense, but how? Because these behaviors seem to be automatic. I don't notice what I'm thinking when I'm doing this. I'm not consciously thinking these thoughts. They're sort of running in the background. So not only do I work with this a ton on my clients, and that's what the whole upgrade program is about, but there's a chapter in Chasing Cupcakes that focuses on this a lot. And last Saturday, we started with chapter 7. It's a really long chapter, so we broke it up. And we're going to go into the second half of chapter 7 here. And it starts with this header of the practice of optimizing your thoughts, and a Bonnie Kelly quote that says, "If you believe you aren't good enough, think of how many chances you'll have in a week to prove yourself." And again, this is from Chasing Cupcakes, which is my first book. There are 3 different ways you can practice this, and we all need as much as we can, as much practice as possible. I'm not suggesting you stand in line and tell yourself, I love waiting. No lying, no sarcasm. I did not convince myself that I loved the noisy Starbucks environment. In our last episode, I was talking about how I went to Starbucks to write when I was in the process of writing Chasing Cupcakes years ago. And I was super annoyed at somebody having a really loud conversation and somebody being on their phone and having it on speakerphone. All of these things were just bugging me. And I was upset because of my thoughts. I wasn't upset inherently because it was loud there. I was upset because of the story I was telling myself about it. For those of you that are new to the series, I'm not reading right now. I'm kind of giving you guys some context and bringing it up to speed. And that is so often the case. We think we are upset about circumstances, but we're actually upset about our perception of the circumstance, our belief around the circumstance. And a lot of people feel stuck there because they're like, well, but how I feel is true. It really is noisy in there, and that is annoying me. The goal is not to be like, I love the noise and look at this place full of life. No, we are not being Pollyanna. We are not trying to tell ourselves that we love working out if we don't love working out. So I want to really make sure that's a very strong point of emphasis here. This is not about lying. So the chapter continues. It says, I didn't convince myself that I love noisy Starbucks environments. I reminded myself of how many other options I have. I had told a story about how I would get annoyed when people can't seem to deplane efficiently when you land at an airport, and like it's just chaos. And it's like, guys, what is this, your first day, first flight? Like, this is ridiculous. So in the chapter, I say, I didn't tell myself that I love waiting to get off the plane. I reminded myself how lucky I am to be safe and able to gather my own belongings without assistance. When I was at my heaviest, I didn't tell myself that I loved my body. I told myself that I'm capable of changing it. I didn't tell myself that I always make awesome choices. I told myself that I always have one good choice in me. So there's 3 different kinds of redirects you can practice with your thoughts. There's a neutral redirect, an empowering redirect, and a positive redirect. The neutral redirect turns your attention away from the negative thought or the thought that isn't helpful, the thought that makes you feel crappy, and turns your attention toward a different topic, right? Just a completely neutral change of thoughts. The empowering redirect shifts your attention from what is wrong or what you perceive as wrong or what you perceive as bad or what you can't do to something that is within your control, right? So you're focused on a frustration or a perceived barrier, and the empowering redirect shifts your focus to something that's within your control. The positive redirect turns your attention towards a positive belief about yourself or your circumstance. We can see how these would work in the grocery store example. So the next time that you feel frustrated by a line at the grocery store, consider these options. A neutral redirect is use the wait time to catch up on email or return your text messages. The empowering redirect is, hey, I can get in a different line. I can also leave all my stuff here and go home, and I don't have to stand here and wait. Nobody's forcing me to stand in this line. I'm choosing to, so I got options. The positive redirect, Here you are, able to buy your own groceries, able to shop on your own, able to prepare food for yourself or your family. I'm not going to turn my blessings into burdens. Like, I'm really lucky to be able to do this. So let's practice these 3 redirects, neutral, empowering, and positive, on an example that's maybe more closely associated with the goal you want to achieve. Let's say that you find your thoughts revolving around the fact that you have no self-control and you're beating yourself up for breaking a promise you made and you feel like, I just can't change. It's not possible. No matter how good my intentions are, I cave to temptation every time. As soon as you notice the thoughts, even if it's after the fact, okay? Even if it's after the fact, practice the neutral, the empowering, or the positive redirect. So if the original thought is, I have no self-control, neutral is, what's on Netflix that I'm excited to watch later? Or what project am I going to get crossed off my list today? Or who's the last person who texted me? Is there a friend I can check in on? Just something neutral and otherwise unrelated to the thought of I have no self-control. A neutral redirect, here's what it is. It's the fact that you might not control that thought arising, spontaneously popping up into your consciousness, but you do control if you stay with it and if you fuel it with your attention or your emotion. So if we have a thought arise, and it might be rooted in truth, but it's not serving you, it's not aligned with progress, like I suck, I'm such a quitter, I'm such an all or nothing person. You did not necessarily intentionally conjure up that thought. You might not have control over that thought spontaneously arising, but you do have control over if you choose to stay with it or not. So the neutral redirect is just a decision that I don't have to stay with this thought. Now, same thought, I have no self-control. An empowering redirect is I actually do have control. There's a difference between not having control and not taking control. Nobody has control but me when it comes to what I put in my mouth, right? Or whatever this thing is that I'm saying I don't have self-control over. And a positive redirect is more directly encouraging, like, hey, this is a critical first step. The fact that I'm aware of this, that I'm paying attention to the thought, that I'm attempting to change it, that's awesome. That is an indicator that I'm looking to do things differently. So what's my next best choice? Now, the neutral redirect, thinking about, hey, what's on Netflix or who do I need to text back? That might seem like a total waste of time, but it's not. You might not be in the mood for an empowering redirect or a positive redirect, but at least you're not going to continue to give your energy to thoughts that are associated with the problem or thoughts that don't move you forward, thoughts that make you feel crappy, thoughts that aren't aligned with a solution. And yeah, you would benefit more from shifting to the solution or from something that's an empowering thought, but it is absolutely better to turn away from the thought altogether than to just stay with it because you don't want to practice an empowering or a positive redirect. For the sake of clarity, a neutral redirect is not a negative redirect. You don't want to switch your attention from thinking that you have no self-control to thinking about how you hate your job, right? You don't want to switch from thinking how you have no self-control to the fact that your arms are so fat. You aren't shifting your energy to something negative. You're shifting your energy and your focus and putting it on something that is truly neutral. And the more you practice these redirects in any situation, the easier it becomes in every situation. The more deeply rooted your belief in the problem is, the more opportunities you're going to have to practice, and that means the faster you can improve. So think about it this way. The more often you find yourself thinking about the problem, the more opportunities that exist for you to practice these redirects, and the more that you're practicing, the better that you get, the easier it becomes. I want to be very clear about the hardest part. This really, truly is the hardest part. You have to be willing to let go of the problem and not just cling to it because it's familiar or because you think you're right or because it justifies your lack of progress and then makes you feel like, well, this is why. Now I have a reason. You don't have to retreat into the familiar story of the problem. And honestly, this is the hardest part because this is what a lot of people aren't willing to do. They feel so validated when they're in the problem, like, well, it's because I'm so stressed and it's because I'm taking care of family members and it's because I don't have time and it's because of my hormones. They find so much validation there that they don't want to move to something else. But you have to be willing to surrender your ego and say, yeah, I do feel justified there and I feel validated, but that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is change. And so I'm willing to stop telling the story of the problem.
Hey, it's Molly, and I just want to talk with you for a minute about Sunnyside. I know I talk about Sunnyside and have been talking about Sunnyside for, 2 years now. And I want to let you know that that is because of not only the results that I see my clients get, but because I know the people at Sunnyside and I know how committed they are to making a product that really delivers, not only in terms of results, but in terms of user experience. They recently launched an Android version of the Sunnyside app, and inside the app, there's new upgrades and ways to support you that really are defined by the user experience. And that is just something that I really appreciate about them. I know you can trust who they are as a company, and that's really important to me. I would love for you to check it out. Go to sunnyside.co/Molly to get started with a 15-day free trial today.
I write this story in the book. It says, I worked for months with a client whose story was that she is an emotional eater. And she was struggling to change this pattern of behavior in large part because she identified more with the problem than with the solution. More of her thoughts and words and choices supported the problem of emotional eating than the solution or the change she wanted to create. So to help her establish a new way of thinking about it, we started with a question. And as we talk more about it in the coming chapters, you'll see that questions are a powerful tool that can really help you create new ways of thinking. After she made a solid case for her emotional eating, including how long she's been doing it and why she does it, and a summary of all of her past failed attempts to change, I asked her a question. I said, what else is true of your emotional eating? And here are some of the things she told me. She said, it doesn't make me feel better. And when I choose it, not only do I feel awful, but I've missed a chance to practice creating a new pattern of behavior. Nobody is forcing me to be an emotional eater. It is possible for me to not eat when I'm emotional. I just need more practice and I need a compelling reason. There's nothing about me or food that makes it impossible to change. And I've been choosing what feels easiest, even though there are different options. I can do hard things. Emotional eating is a past pattern, and it's only a present pattern if I continue to choose it. So practicing the 3 redirects was the stepping stone to her new story. When she felt drawn to eat in response to emotion, or when she was thinking about this pattern of behavior, she'd practice one of these 3. A neutral redirect for her was like, okay, enough of that. Enough of this thoughts around emotional eating and why I want to do it. I'm going to work on this presentation that's due tomorrow morning. Or an empowering redirect for her was, I am in control of my choices and I can choose differently in this moment. And this moment is my only opportunity to change. That's the only time change happens, is in the present. And a positive redirect, I'm completely capable of making myself feel better if I decide to. So what am I going to do right now that's going to make me feel better? There's a Seneca quote in the book that says, he suffers more than necessary who suffers before it is necessary. And what that basically means is like when we worry about things that are up ahead, we are suffering more than necessary because it's not here yet. The book continues, imagine for a minute that it's midwinter and the temperatures outside are far below freezing. You've cranked the heat inside, but it's still super drafty. And you don't understand why it's not warming up until you realize that somebody left 3 windows open upstairs. All your heat is pouring out the windows and the cold air is being invited in. So you slam the windows shut. The house can't warm up with all the heat escaping. If you're struggling to create change in your life, and changing your behavior feels hard, there is likely a lot of motivation, energy, and focus escaping, just like the heat out the open window. You have enough motivation, energy, and focus, you just can't continue wasting it. And this stems back also to your thoughts. If you think you don't have enough motivation, time, or effort to create the change you want in your life, I'll bet part of the reason for that sense of not enough stems from the wasted time and energy going into factors that simply aren't relevant or simply aren't helpful. When you nip that inefficiency and unintended loss in the bud, change becomes easier. The hard road starts looking much more like easy street, and improving your ability to recognize when your thoughts simply are not relevant or are not helpful, that's going to free up all sorts of energy and emotion that you can use to create change. One of my clients shared with me that she wants to create the same improvements with food that she's already worked hard to make with alcohol. She used to be a binge drinker, and her first couple days without alcohol were hard, and she was totally miserable. But once she got to the 3rd or 4th day without it, she remembered just how great she feels when she's not drinking. And the contrast she created by avoiding alcohol completely for a few days helped her completely reframe her thoughts about drinking. Instead of being caught in the allure of alcohol, she was more drawn to how great she felt without it. She couldn't experience that contrast without first giving herself the experience of change and pushing through the initial hard days. She cut herself off from the belief that not drinking meant missing out, and she chose a new belief fueled by practice that she misses out on far more when she does drink. Having created that experience with alcohol, she wanted to do the same thing with food. And she had a pattern of binge eating. As things were, the temptation to overeat was greater than the desire to eat healthy. She was much more practiced in turning to food than she was in not turning to food. And she and I were talking about how she could generate enough momentum to have a few great controlled days with food to find out how good she could feel without binging. To create the contrast bias, she was gonna have to resist temptation and work through the hard days of early change. To create the momentum for that effort, she'd have to change her thoughts. And while we brainstormed ways to reframe the way she thinks about food and binging, she randomly started talking about how she recently became very jealous of a friend after seeing a picture on social media. And this friend had made different choices and seemed to be living a healthy, happy life. And she shared that her friend was fit and lean and had a lot of success in her career. And after listening to her lament the path she wished she had taken, I stopped her and I said, that's not relevant. You're wasting energy comparing yourself to somebody else and dwelling on past opportunities. You aren't focused on what you can do. You aren't focused on today. You're giving your energy away to somebody else and to the past and to things you didn't do. Metaphorically, she was opening up all the windows, letting the heat escape. Don't let comparison drain your energy. Don't let the past drain your energy. Don't let what you can't do drain your energy. Identify the thoughts and stories that either aren't relevant or aren't helpful. They're artificial constraints that you are manufacturing. Leave them behind. Shut them down. Don't fuel them with your attention. You are the thinker. Use these moments to practice thinking differently by redirecting your thoughts. Happened to be the next day I was having a conversation with a middle-aged client who shared with me she wants to stop overthinking. It's exhausting her, and the habit left her spinning her wheels with options and then doing nothing at all. Her overthinking made every choice feel harder than it needed to be, and she was wasting mental energy and time considering every possible option, and the pattern just wasn't working. We talked about creating the experience of just one day with less thinking and more doing. I asked if she was able to practice simple decision-making criteria like yes or no instead of a simple 2-hour debate just for a day, and she was on board. We talked about breaking out of the thinking pattern and breaking into the doing pattern by asking simple questions like, hey, what choice brings me closer to my goals? Is this my best? Is it a hell yes? If not, it's a no. Thinking less, doing more. Taking an easier road instead of staying on the harder one. And a few minutes into our conversation about the solution and about what her practice will look like, she interjected and said, "It's so weird. My kids are off to college and I'm just in this different phase of life. It's an adjustment." And her solution energy went out the window when she started entertaining a thought that was unrelated. And while her comments were true, they were not relevant. When you're locked in on a solution, don't allow yourself these tangents. Don't retreat into a story. Don't jump to another problem because it makes you feel validated or justified. Now, don't misunderstand me. Some people will choose to interpret this as me saying, I don't care about my client's circumstances, and that couldn't be further from the truth. What I'm trying to illuminate is the tendency to follow these wild, winding rabbit trails of thoughts and ideas that let your energy, your motivation, and your focus fly out the window, leaving you with not enough remaining to be a joyful change agent in your own life. The hard road is littered with tangents and ideas that are not relevant to the change you want to create. And continuing down that rabbit hole of thought, she'd have argued for the fact that life is hard, change is hard, and she's doing the best she can. And while there's nothing inherently wrong with those thoughts, I wanted to give her and you to practice giving energy to the solution without inviting irrelevant distractions. I wanted her to recognize when she is distracting herself with thoughts or other problems and considerations that just aren't relevant or aren't helpful. Does her kids moving out have anything to do with her practice of simple decision making? No. Does it in any way alter what she can do today? No, it's just a narrative. It's an energy vacuum. If you're giving your energy to a solution or trying to resolve a problem, give your energy to that. Don't loop in different parts of a story that aren't related. They're only going to slow you down and steal your focus and momentum. Ruthlessly ask yourself the following questions. Is this relevant? Is this related to me or is it related to somebody else? Is this related to what I can do now or am I dwelling in the past or the future? Is this a necessary consideration in order for me to take action or am I maybe distracting myself with unrelated things? Is this part of the solution? Because if it's not part of the solution, we don't need it right now. We can't talk about the power of your thoughts without addressing the malignant pattern of all or nothing thinking. We can all relate to the fact that all or nothing thinking doesn't work in any pursuit. In fact, I'd argue that all or nothing thinking is another way of saying inconsistent. Many people will define themselves, or probably more appropriately, confine themselves by saying, I'm totally all or nothing. I'm such an all or nothing thinking, as if it's the only way they can be. However, if we had them replace all or nothing with inconsistent, the solution would immediately become more clear. All or nothing is a choice, and there are other options. An all or nothing inconsistent approach doesn't work when it comes to food, when it comes to fitness, money, relationships, or career. We often know it doesn't work, but we choose it anyway. And to create lasting success, you have to leave that approach behind. Overcoming a pattern of all or nothing thinking requires two things. Number one, awareness. And number two, practice. That's it. It doesn't require white knuckle willpower or any complicated plan or program. You can overcome all or nothing thinking with just these two simple elements, self-awareness and practice. Self-awareness is required because all or nothing behaviors are nothing more than a perspective you talk yourself into. You convince yourself via flawed logic and a limited acknowledgement of the truth. You know it's not effective to bounce back and forth between all in and all out. Any negotiation in favor of it reflects incomplete thoughts. Self-awareness helps you notice that. All or nothing patterns are fueled by your thoughts and they are executed in your choices. Some of the most common ways we talk ourselves into it, this all or nothing thinking, are with thoughts like, oh, I'll indulge today and then it'll be out of my system tomorrow, so I'll eat super clean then, or I've already screwed up, so I already ruined the day. What's the point? What is implied in that logic is that change is a zero-sum game. You convince yourself that if you failed one choice, the entire day is lost. And the only thing that logic accomplishes is becoming a master beginner who never finishes. And that's not going to work. A client emailed me the other day explaining that she had a terrible weekend and she promised to eat clean, but ended up having a couple drinks and some dessert. And from there, she said things went downhill. She overate, overindulged, felt absolutely terrible. And I asked her to share with me how she talked herself into the choices after the initial choice to have a drink. This is the self-awareness piece. What thoughts did you think to convince yourself to respond that way? And here was your thought process. Well, I already screwed up, so what's the point? That's the logic that makes a case for all or nothing. It's not going to work. Screw it, I blew it. It's a story. It's a grossly incomplete story. It's dramatic, and more importantly, it's not effective. It's not helpful. We choose these half-baked dismissals because in the moment, they're permissive. They give us permission to indulge, permission to do what feels good in the moment, and permission to put our goals on hold. If you're telling yourself there's a problem, engage in solving it. If drinks and dessert are a problem, what's the solution? Practice thinking in complete thoughts. It's not the brownie that's the problem. The brownie didn't create the all or nothing pattern. Your thoughts about the choice to eat the brownie, those are the problem. Demand of yourself the self-awareness that comes from honesty. Stop thinking in incomplete thoughts. Saying, I already blew it, so what's the point, is incomplete, right? It's a lie you tell yourself because it's easy, it's convenient, it's familiar. Commit to the entire story. What is the point? Did you blow it? What does blowing it mean? Is there a problem? What's the solution? How can you make it better? Can you make it worse? How? If you convince yourself to make more of the same choices, what happens? How are you going to feel then? Is it worth it? Think about how catastrophic and inconceivable all or nothing thinking would be in any other area of your life. Well, I'm late to pick up the kids, so what's the point? I'll just leave them there and try and be on time tomorrow. Or I'm late on this project deadline, so screw it. I'll take the day off and try again tomorrow. The consequences of that would be disastrous. And here's the thing. They're presently disastrous too. As you become increasingly aware of the ways you negotiate for the permission to be off or choosing nothing, you can begin to practice an alternative approach. And an alternative approach to all or nothing thinking lives in the middle. Pursue the middle. Instead of thinking that you either make it to the gym today or you do nothing, what's the middle ground? What are all the options that live between the workout you intended and doing nothing? Instead of thinking that you either eat perfectly or you binge, what's the middle? What are all of the options that live between those two ends of the spectrum? Identify the middle options and choose them. All of these patterns stem from your thoughts, so you have to commit to the practice. If this still feels like, okay, I get it, but I need more help, I need more guidance, Upgrade is really, really great for that. It is less than $150, and if you get the free 2-page outline of everything that I teach in it, it gives you a 24-hour discount code that knocks that price down even further, which is a little bit bonkers, but hey, we're doing it. So to get that, just go to primalpotential.com/emotional eating, primalpotential.com/emotional eating. And if you have any questions, let me know, because that's what I'm here for.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Alcohol Minimalist Podcast. Take something you learned from this week's episode and put it into action. Changing your drinking habits and creating a peaceful relationship with alcohol is 100% possible. You can stop worrying, stop feeling guilty about overdrinking, and become someone who desires alcohol less. I work with people in 3 ways. You can learn about them over at www.mollywatts.com/workwithme. Or better yet, reach out to me directly. It's molly@mollywatts.com. We'll jump on a call and discuss what's best for you. This podcast is really just the beginning of our conversation. Let's keep it going.